Hey guys, what's up? It is week 446. Just have some reviews for you. A couple really cool ones though. But the first one is from 88 Films. This is a 4K, and this is 11 Days, 11 Nights Part 2, a film by Joe D'Amato. And this is from the third in a series, even though it's Part 2. They do talk a little bit about the history of this series and the commentary and everything like that. The first one was somewhat based on or inspired by 9.5 Weeks. You know how a lot of the Italian film industry or any low-budget industry would kind of catch on to a popular title and kind of cash in on it with a similar title and a similar plot and everything like that. And the Italians are no stranger to doing that. And I guess they were really successful. It was one of Joe D'Amato's most financially successful movies. Joe D'Amato started off his career as a cinematographer. He worked on tons of bigger movies, but he eventually would get into directing. And I don't remember when he exactly started directing, probably the 70s. But he did a lot of porno films. But from us horror fans, he's famous for Mrparka and Absurd. He ran the company Film Mirage, which is what this 11 Days, 11 Nights Part 2 is from. Film Mirage started off with Mrparka, but later on they would be making their movies in America. And they were kind of infamous for being a lot of times really unintentionally funny and ridiculous. I think like Eurocine and Film Mirage are just kind of names that are synonymous with, not all of them, I don't want to say every film, but a lot of them unintentional, ridiculous humor. So this one, it fits into that for me. Now, they filmed a lot of these in America, and it was towards the later day Italian film industry, right? They weren't doing the huge dubbing kind of deal. I think a lot of the actors in this time were speaking English, and all of these people are speaking English here, and they dubbed it over in Italian, which brings up a really funny point in this film. Is Cobretti on the commentary talks about actually really preferring the Italian version because they are actually really highly skilled professional Italian dubbers doing the dubbing here, and they just do a much better job than the American actors counterparts. But the plot is as follows. This famous kind of, I guess she's a journalist in this one, kind of reminds me of a little bit of a Black Emmanuel character who's in this. Laura Gemser's in this, who's a longtime Joe D'Amato collaborator. So she basically is brought in. She had a steamy affair with the guy who runs this whole place. He was like a rich guy. And basically they want her to break down the estate, be the executor of the will, and decide who gets the money. He's passed away. She enters in. Everybody's upset that she's there until the lawyer reads, basically she's the executor and decides who gets the money. This is when it starts becoming really odd. And of course everybody's going to start sleeping with her. Or she's going to start seducing everybody. And it kind of comes down to her trying to seduce or get this impotent guy sexually active and whatnot. There's plenty of sex, there's plenty of nudity, and that's really the highlight here. The lead actress, I don't know if she's the worst actress ever. She's probably one of the better actresses in the movie, to be honest, or better people in the film. She's absolutely gorgeous. Laura Gemser's in here, small role, good, decent performance. But a lot of the side people in here, and I can't even give them, really, they're not very popular actors, maybe one or two films, are absolutely awful. It seems like everybody's soul has died, and I always make the joke, right? They just had no passion in their eyes, and none of these actors have passion in their eyes when it comes to the family. They're just, yes, I want the money too. Do you? It seems very cue cardish and funny, which it adds this element of, I guess, unintentional comedy within, the steamy sex scenes. In 4K, it looks absolutely phenomenal. I was just kind of amazed, It was kind of like when Cult Epics did the Tinto Brass movies, and they were in 4K, and I was like, this is kind of wild. Although the Tinto Brass movies are actually better than this. Now, I'm a big Joe D'Amato fan, so, I don't really get into, the, sexy stuff like this so much. I have watched this kind of horror sex hybrids like Porno Holocaust and Erotic Nights of the Living Dead, and even stuff like Sex and Black Magic, which I'm fine with. I like that kind of element here, but these kind of having this, they're more so just like softcore with plenty of nudity, and they're well shot and everything like that. The acting is terrible. The plot is kind of mediocre, kind of average kind of plot here. Like I said, the remaster is spectacular, and there's some decent features on here. I enjoyed the commentary with Ercolani, Eugenio Ercolani, and I can't remember Cobretti's first name. Is it Nanni Cobretti? They have a good back and forth, and they talk about the series and everything like that, Top Model being the second one, and how successful the first film was, which I think 88 Films put out over in Italy and everything like that. So if you want to track down the first film. So they talk a lot about this. They talk about the changing of the actress from parts 1, 2 to 3, and they go down all this kind of thing like that. Besides that, there's also which is a really good special feature as well, Film Mirage from Dusk Till Dawn, an interview with dubbing director Mark Thomas Ashworth. And this is hilarious. Not hilarious, but this is like incredibly interesting, and there's a lot of funny anecdotes, I should say, in it. But he kind of talks about, being an English guy going over in Italy and getting a job being like a dubbing director and meeting like Nick Alexander and working for him and working for the big studios against working for Joe D'Amato and all that kind of stuff like that. So Joe D'Amato, there's a lot of Joe D'Amato stories too, and I've always liked the guy and I've always liked his interviews and stuff. Unfortunately, he died fairly young. And besides that, we also have 7 Notes, 11 Nights, an interview with composer Piero Montetartari, and Eros in a Plastic Age, an interview with music historian Pier Pablo de Santisc, Italian opening and closing credits, a reversible sleeve featuring new art by Shan Longmore, and original Italian poster. So overall, great release and presentation of a movie that I'm just not really, I guess, the fan base for this one. I had a lot of interest in it because it's Joe D'Amato, and I like him, and I like 88 Films, and it's such a gorgeous looking release. 2-disc here and everything like that. Great advertising, but it's just a weird time in Italian cinema, and I find the special features more interesting than the actual film itself, if that makes any sense to anybody. I'm more interested in just the kind of trajectory of Italian cinema, and if I have to watch a couple of these, I will, just to understand it, and I do enjoy the special features. And I mean, the nudity was pleasant to watch, but and it also, it's definitely a group film. Watch this with some people and have some laughs. Do not watch this by yourself in a serious kind of state of mind. I think it'd be more enjoyable to kind of, honestly, which is not really my thing, but have some laughs at the movie's expense. I also would recommend some more of the other Film Mirage movies, more so. Welcome to Spring Break, I think, is one by Umberto Lenzi, and even like Hitcher in the Dark, another Lenzi one, I would recommend. And some of the Film Mirage movies are absolutely fantastic. I think that Joe D'Amato, I think that Stage Fright by Michele Soave was actually Film Mirage as well. So there's some great ones in there too. Okay, this one I'm going to be relatively short here, but this is from Dread Central, and this was a movie that came out in 2023 called The Jester. And obviously the cover here, I know that Dread Central originally had some great success with the Terrifier movie. So I don't know, they're kind of looking for this kind of new kind of character, I guess, to kind of fill those shoes of Art the Clown. That's what it seems like, but this film is actually inspired or was made because the director did 3 shorts, one in 2016, one in 2017, and one in 2019. That all involve this Jester-like character. And this kind of character walks around Halloween and he tricks people. And the first 3 shorts have a nice circular story. They work really well. They're actually, I think, as a whole, of 34 minutes, I think they're better than the first Jester film itself. But the Jester film, it's kind of taking, pages out of a bunch of other horror films. Not to say that it's completely unoriginal or anything like that. I mean, most horror films kind of do borrow or steal or whatever you want to say here. But the first thing I noticed when I was watching this is we have the actor from Your Pretty Face is Going to Hell, the Henry Zebrowski, was an Adult Swim show, and we have the Devil, the guy who plays Satan in it, who's a tremendously funny comedic actor, and he's in here, and he's playing a very serious kind of depressing role, and he's calling his daughter to try to reconnect and apologize, and he's kind of being, talked to with the Jester, and he basically makes him commit suicide. So in a lot of ways it started to feel kind of like Smile or The Babadook or of course Terrifier. It's like a mixture of those things and the original shorts. So of course, the daughter kind of comes in. There's 2 daughters that are estranged. The whole family's estranged. And they kind of meet up while the Jester is in the background pulling the strings and killing people and trying to get them to pit against each other. And it's a story about grief and getting over the death of a loved one or somebody that you barely knew. And it gets kind of deep in that kind of stuff. Overall, I think it's decent. I don't think it's an amazing film or anything like that, but I do kind of like the independent spirit. I would recommend it for the shorts on there. I think the shorts are really fun. I think they're really entertaining, and I think the circular story and the Jester's character is a little bit more realized than that. And listening to the commentary on the next movie I'll talk about, I think that it kind of gave me a little bit of more understanding and everything like that as well. But yeah, this doesn't have many features besides the original Jester shorts, which I would recommend checking out for sure. Okay, now we have the Jester 2 from Dread Central, and this is 2025. This is a new release, and I think it's an improvement on the first film. I think I enjoy more of the 2 main characters, of course, the Jester, and our lead kind of character here, and Max. It takes place on Halloween. Love that as well. So now, it kind of, listening to the commentary with the director and the DP, we get the history of how this movie got made, how the original Jester movie got made, how Dread Central contacted them, and they had a huge up in budget, the stress levels, all that kind of stuff here, and how when they did part 2, he wanted to take it back to the original roots and have more of that kind of style and everything along that lines. And he basically talks about having this character and Max have this this element of, when you're kind of growing up, your high school age, where you want to say you still enjoy all the things you do, but it's time to say goodbye to some of those to grow up. And she's just kind of an outcast, and nobody really seems to have time for her, and she's starts to be kind of bullied and everything like that. She's into magic, and what happens is she runs to the Jester, and the Jester's gag is to trick you and basically kind of get you. When he tricks you, he kind of kills you in a certain way, or maybe just like fucks with you and you kind of get away. You never quite know what the Jester's going to do. He's kind of that playful villain where, he might just, take your wallet or something, or the next guy will get sent to the oblivion or something along those lines. Just weird kind of, you never know. And the way they explain him, and I think it works pretty well, is he doesn't really understand the difference in those kind of elements here. But we get some deep mythology within the Jester, which adds some nice cool elements, which I've never quite really seen a killer. Maybe a little bit like the Wishmaster or something along those lines, but our character is a silent, type killer, but also a magical one, which is pretty cool. And so what happens is, of course, Max runs into the Jester, and she actually plays a card trick on the Jester, not knowing that he's this monster. And since she bested him, now they're kind of entangled to kind of commit the crimes or the sins that the Jester had to carry out through Halloween. So that's basically it. The atmosphere is pretty solid. There's characters that they kill in here that I think you kind of root for them to be killed. And in line with, I always use this as an example, but Henry, they talk about in Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer, these characters you've been with the whole time, and you kind of want to latch onto them somehow. So, the villains or whatnot, but then they kill like an unlikable character. So you're like, yeah, get them. This guy, they don't know who they're messing with. And then they kind of sometimes will cut to characters that are really like going to get killed that you don't want to get killed. So in that element and everything like that. This movie also does something where they add some nuances in, where you think these characters are awful people, and then they kind of have a moment of reflection before, the inevitable, which I thought was a nice little touch. Overall, I think the Jester 2 is a little bit better. I think that it works better. It has a little making of on there, which is nice, and it has the director's story about the series, and I think that worked well. But yeah, I think the special effects are a little better. I think the kills are innovative. Overall, it's a decent supernatural slasher movie. For any hardcore, fans of slasher films and they're looking for something new, I would check it out. I would recommend it. It's not too bad from Dread Central. The Jester 2, enjoyable. I think it's better than Diced, which they also put out, which isn't horrible, but I think that the gore effects are great in Diced, but I think the Jester 2 is just a little bit more I would say, original. Alright guys, now we're going to dive into the Shawscope Volume 4. I'm going to try to get this done in 3 weeks. It's massive. There is 10 discs on here and maybe 13, 14 movies or anything like that. I'm covering 5 this week, and the first one up is one that I've actually seen. And they talk about this time period of... the Shaw Brothers was kind of a unique one where they were trying to appeal maybe to like more of a general audience, listening to all the commentaries and everything along those lines. They're saying that Shaw Brothers was kind of changing their MO in the 70s. They were kind of inspired by American exploitation to kind of get to the outside market, because a lot of the Shaw Brother films were not made just for Shaw Brothers. Of course, it's such a small market in Hong Kong. They're kind of out there to get all over the world and everything like that. But then there's all these other elements that they're trying to kind of play into while using some of the old classic kind of stories and everything like that, and maybe update them and do some horror films and some sci-fi. And the first one here is a Toku Matsu film. I know what they are. I just have trouble saying the word. I don't typically use the word. But the Power Rangers style thing, which is crazy that Shaw Brothers, you don't think Chinese when you think that. You most likely think Japanese. Of course, you got Kamen Rider, Ultraman, all those kind of things like that. And this one is Super Inframan, which I actually covered before. I think 1976 is Inframan, 1976. Early movie here by the director of Kung Fu Zombie and Portrait in Crystal, which is also in this set. But I've covered Super Inframan, so revisiting it was a lot of fun. I think I originally watched the English version, which is a little bit different, different music and some shorter scenes and change scenes and everything like that, which is included on here. But now you can also watch it in its original Cantonese and Mandarin language here. So Super Inframan is an absolute blast of a film. It's completely crazy. It never slows down. Early performance by Danny Lee, who's actually outside, the guy playing it outside the suit and inside the suit. Now the plot is absolutely bonkers, very typical of something along the lines of this. So all of a sudden, out of nowhere, the ground starts shaking and a building is blown up in a bunch, or something. There's like a huge, catastrophic event where a bunch of people die, and everybody's like, what is going on? All these scientists, the best scientists, kind of like a team of people are trying to figure out what's going on, and these monsters just emerge out of nowhere, and they just start killing people, and they're threatened by like this Rita Repulsa style character who tells them, listen, you guys will bend to our whim. We have been here forever, and I've created thousands of monsters for years, and I still have some, and whatnot, and if you don't bend, we are going to destroy you single-handedly. We'll blow a bunch of things up. Luckily, our scientists do have a super suit just on hand, and Danny Lee is the candidate for it, so they pop Danny Lee in here, and we're going to see if Super Inframan can take on this small army of weird, eclectic monsters. So the monsters are absolutely ridiculous. They're definitely in the Power Rangers style. I just used that. Obviously, Power Rangers came after, but it's very easy for the Western audience to know what Power Rangers is. So, you have these monsters that this character, I don't want to say they're that. I mean, I like yokai. I felt like a lot of the Power Rangers characters was like yokai. It's like, I'm a piece of lipstick. It's like, what the fuck kind of monster is this? But, so these ones are more like you have a guy who has a drill on his hand, you have a plant man, you have a fire dragon, and stuff like that. The monsters are really cool. You have a spider, of course, which Frank Jin in the commentary mentions. The Spider was kind of a classic character that would always fight Kamen Rider or any of the other kind of heroes of these genres here. But, and get to the commentary, Frank Jin talks, who does all these commentaries and does a good job. He mentions that, the Hong Kong, Shaw Brothers were seeing this kind of, not American, but Japanese shows like Kamen Rider and Ultraman play on the television. They were making a lot of money, so they wanted to get in on it. Shaw Brothers wanted to do their own version, and this is where Super Inframan came in. But it's also a mixture of the kung fu elements, so there's a lot of these big elaborate fight scenes that you'll see in their fantasy films or something along the lines, and it has all that kind of stuff as well. And there's even times where like side characters will branch off and you'll see these long fight scenes with these monsters hand to hand and everything like that. There's some really gem moments in here. There's where like he fights a spider, and the squash scene and the kaiju scene is absolutely brilliant, and there's a lot of like hilarious, just childlike kind of stuff that's very funny to me. Like, for example, one of the bad guys gets killed, the plant guy, spoiler, and all the characters are like, let's kill this guy for Plant Man, and like they're like named of the Mega Man villains. Like, they just don't even try to give them names. They're just like, the audience knows what this is. He's Plant Man to them. We're just going to call him Plant Man in the movie. But there's a great fight scene at the end. It's a blast. This movie never stops. It's just a fantastic little superhero, a super kind of Saiyan kind of thing. Like I said, I loved watching this. And the final disc might have some features on there, which I was saving for the very end to watch all these, but maybe I'll jump back and forth on here. But, so this is one of the fantastic ones here of them. It's the only one they did in this kind of vein. And they said maybe in line with a little bit of Mighty Peking Man, but I think this one stands alone. I've never quite seen a Shaw Brothers movie like it. The Plant Man is awesome. That whole fight scene in the kind of science room where he's like shooting all the tentacles and ripping people apart, like not as gory as you would think, but brilliant stuff here. So you have brand new 2K restoration. You have it in Cantonese, Mandarin, and English. Translated subtitles, new ones, commentary by Frank Jin and Eric Ko. Do a very good job here. Frank Jin usually uses Michael Worth, but Eric Ko was, I think, probably knew a little bit more about this subject matter. They talk about growing up in, Hong Kong area and stuff like that at the time where Kamen Rider and Ultraman would play on television, and the downfall of why this movie didn't do so well is directly related to what some kids did inspired by Kamen Rider. That's a great story. I'll let you guys listen to the commentary. And then we have a video essay on Shaw's brief flirtation with the tokusatsu genre, written and narrated by Steven Sloss. Also interesting stuff. Newly filmed interview with co-star Bruce Lee and whatnot. I'm all confused with the Bruce Lee kind of names, the exploitation characters' names. Is it Bruce Lee, all that kind of stuff there. This is before he was known as, a Bruce kind of clone and everything like that. But great way to start this set off. I am super excited. And this is all the Shaw Brothers sets. Like, I love the Shaw Brother movies. I watch them. A lot of times I was completely out of my element in the beginning of watching these movies. I wouldn't say wuxia right. I probably don't say it right now, but there's these actors I would see and I wouldn't know their names. I would know Danny Lee and Sammo Hung, stuff like that, and Jackie Chan. But I'm starting to like hit that point now where it's like, oh, there's Lo Lei. Or there's, T Long and stuff like that. And it's just like been really actually enriching watching these. And a lot of these ones are second time watches going through this set and catching things I didn't catch before and actually showing a little bit more appreciation for the movies. Because you again, it is a second time view on a lot of these ones, and I think that genuinely does help your love for these kind of movies. But yeah, Super Inframan, great way to start the set. And I think it's on sale now. This whole set's like $114. I definitely would grab it for sure. But we'll get into the second one in a bit. Okay, we're going to get into the second Shaw Brothers flick here from the set, and we're going to talk about Battle Wizard here. And Battle Wizard, I'm talking about Battle Wizard before Oily Maniac. Oily Maniac would be a rewatch, but Battle Wizard here. So this is actually based on a kind of a classic a novel series. I can't think, Louis Cha series, where the commentary kind of goes over that stuff, which I was unfamiliar with. But Battle Wizard is one of the craziest, weirdest fantasy kung fu kind of, I don't want to call it a horror movie, but it has horror elements in there for sure. But yeah, let's talk about Battle Wizard a little bit. This is a wild one. So Danny Lee again pops up in this one, and he's a prince who's kind of basically a pacifist, and he's the son of this. It opens up with this big kind of story here about adultery, where these kind of royalty people are cheating on a bunch of people, and what happens is there's this elaborate fight scene with magic and these different kind of styles, and somebody ends up getting their legs cut off. They run away and they said, I'll get my revenge even if it takes me 20 years. Hey, it's 20 years later, and we're gonna bump into Danny Lee being the son of this guy who's actually was the one who took the guy's legs. So Danny Lee's kind of out and about in the jungle, and he runs into the actress from Encounters of the First Kind. Excellent actress. She's pretty decent in this. Not as good as the performance as she has in Encounters of the First Kind. And basically they form a friendship, and what happens is she's kind of a poison person who plays with poison snakes, uses them as a weapon. But they run into some trouble. They run into a gang out in the middle of the wilderness who also dabble in poison and things of that nature. And what happens is she has to call in her master, who's an actress, pops up in stuff like Black Magic 1 and 2, and I think she's actually in Hex as well. So she pops in, and she has her face covered. She says, "I'll never show a man my face unless I'm planning. I'll then kill him or marry him." So that's kind of where she's at. And these two start to form this weird kind of relationship, this love blossoming thing, because there's this mega villain with missing legs and his henchman, who is this. I don't know how to explain him, but he's a creature with a hard head and scales, and he's disgusting, and he's like a would-be rapist monster. And these two are kind of like the main, I guess, antagonists of the film, and they start to have this battle with them. We come to find out, of course, that all the characters are intertwined and related, and they have grudges, and there's going to be a big elaborate fight scene here. There's some unintentional funny moments that are completely fucking insane, including a kung fu gorilla. Yeah. The red python, which you drink its blood and you become invincible, but then at the same time he gets some other invincible power. It is completely bonkers. Danny Lee's good in it, and it ends in a little bit of a tragedy. I thought Battle Wizard was actually freaking phenomenal, honestly. I don't remember, the commentary is not listed on who did the commentary on here, but there is a commentary, and I feel like is it James Munge, or I don't want to mix him up, but he does a really good kind of description. They don't list who does the commentary on here and the special features, but I did listen to it, and he talks about the history of Louis Cha and what is adapted into this and what's not, and all that kind of stuff like that. Really good, interesting kind of look at the series and everything. And the cover art is so phenomenal on that. All the characters and so much good artwork and everything like that on that. But a lot of good characters, a lot of good twists and turns, and completely, vastly entertaining with plenty of monsters and good characters. But I loved Battle Wizard. Awesome stuff. Weird title. You would suggest that it's not based off classic literature. You'd be like, oh, this is going to be just a completely wacky movie, and it's that too. I put it along with something like Buddha's Palm from '82, also a really wacky, good movie. But yeah, Battle Wizard, good stuff. Okay, moving on to the next one here. We're going to talk a little bit about The Oily Maniac from 1976. And this is actually directed by the guy who did Black Magic 1 and 2 and The Mighty Peking Man. We'll talk about Black Magic 1 and 2 in a bit, but I covered Mighty Peking Man here, which is their answer to the kaiju movies. And again, this one stars Danny frickin' Lee. Danny Lee is in the first 3 of these movies, which is always welcome, like Danny Lee. But yeah, The Oily Maniac, I've covered this one before. So essentially what we have here, this is also based on a folklore mythology, and what come to find or realize in the special features and just watching these movies in general, right? You know how America will have their, I don't want to call it xenophobia, right? But you have the xenophobic, like, hey, and hostile, or we went to this, Eastern European country and we're killed, or we went to South America and we run into the jungles and the cannibal movies and all this stuff like that, even though that's Italian, but it still is the same kind of idea, right? So in the Hong Kong movies, essentially it would be like, hey, we went to Southeast Asia or something, Malaysia or Singapore or any of these places like that, and we get a curse. That often happens, and The Bewitched is like that, which I'll talk about later. I watched that for this one just yet, but I've seen Bewitched and all those kind of movies like that. They usually don't necessarily take place, the curse stuff doesn't necessarily take place in Hong Kong. It's usually a visit, and it's this different kind of exotic, kind of crazy world where these kind of different things can happen. And that's kind of what we have here with the Oily Maniac. This kind of mythology is based on something that happened in a lot of those Southeast Asia countries, I think, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe I'm getting my geography wrong here, but I've never been to Southeast Asia, but I mixed down below kind of this area here of the Asia countries and everything like that. But yeah, they kind of mention that in the commentary, and they're breaking it down and saying, well, there's all these different mythologies, movies based on this mythology as well. But I think this one is probably the most popular here. Essentially, Danny Lee is a guy who suffers from polio. And he's in love with this woman that is unattainable. So we kind of have this, and there's a woman that's in love with Danny Lee. So we have this love triangle, dramatic thing as well. But one day, these crooks are kind of pressuring the factory where he works in, and his uncle is also like a foreman in this factory, and they're pressuring these people, and they're trying to do a really shady thing. And what happens is they fight it, and these kind of criminal elements, they start fighting with the foreman and everything, and somebody gets killed. The foreman is blamed for it. The foreman actually ends up being in Black Magic Part 1 as, the evil magic practitioner and whatnot. But he ends up getting put to death, and he reveals this tattoo to Danny Lee and says, listen, take down this curse. I know what it is. And this is basically the curse of the Oily Maniac, that if you need to get justice and do the right thing, you take this curse down and you get an oil, and you will turn into this avenging blob of whatever. So that's kind of it. But if you fuck up or do something wrong, you will end up dying a horrible death. And it feels very Indonesian in that aspect. Some of the Indonesian movies that I've seen, somebody will be ran off from their village, and they'll be like kind of chastised for something they didn't do, and they'll be knocked into like a pit or something along those lines, and they'll run into some sort of magical character who will give them powers, and they will get revenge. They'll either turn into a bat by night, or there'll be a witch with a flying head, or an evil girl, anything along that lines. This one fits in with that kind of Indonesian folk horror as well. But yeah, so what happens is, of course, Danny Lee here wants to get revenge on the criminal element, and all sorts of other people that end up popping out of the woodwork that are really sleazy, horrible people, including a lawyer that is doing really terrible things. And again, at this time, the Shaw Brothers were kicking up their exploitation elements, so there's plenty of nudity and kind of like unconsensual sex and things of that nature. So the exploitation elements big time in these as well. But the most hilarious stuff about this is, the theme music is very much in the vein of Jaws, which came out the year before. So, but there's no water. It's not a water-based film. But what they do have is, this creature that can turn into a puddle to avoid damage, and he'll just melt down into a puddle, and that's kind of how he travels as well. So you'll hear this Jaws-like theme music every time he melts down into a puddle. It's like it's absolutely really hilarious, and I don't know how effective it is, but it's very memorable. And then you'll have the Oily Maniac pop up out of the puddle and just exactly kind of like in that vein. And to be honest, have you guys ever seen Class of Nukem High? Don't want to make a mistake. Nukem High, 84, you mix all these movies up, 1999. But the Class of Nukem High, where we have the little creature that comes out of the toilet at the end, and he's originally in the pipe, and he falls in. So basically, he looks just like the Oily Maniac as a little baby, and you imagine that's what the Oily Maniac is going to grow up to be, although he grows up to something else in the movie, in Nukem High. But this is what he should have looked like. But yeah, so anyways, we have this kind of this love triangle, and people being killed, and the Oily Maniac getting revenge. There's some ridiculous kung fu in there, or fight scenes. I don't want to call it kung fu, but a fight scene with all these characters. Entertaining, good cast. Danny Lee's good in it. It's absolutely insane though when he's like running looking for vats of like coconut oil to jump into and everything of that nature. Commentary's pretty good about discussing, the coconut oil kind of thing in, the Asian countries, as well as going over the mythology and true stories of the Oily Maniac, what it's based on, and the other renditions of the Oily Maniac, one in the 50s, which I think the 88 Films version actually had maybe a little bit of thing about that as well on there. If I remember it correctly, 88 Films released Super Inframan, which is long out of print, the Oily Maniac, which I don't know if it's still in print, and of course Black Magic 1 and 2, and some other ones here as well. But I think that their release had something also about kind of the Oily Maniac kind of mythology, because I remember hearing that stuff before. But yeah, there we go, the Oily Maniac, good commentary as well, only in Mandarin there, but Beta Wizard does have English, so there we go. Very entertaining start to this Shaw Brothers set. Alright, now we're going to talk about the Black Magic movies. Let's start with Black Magic Part 1 from 1975, and I feel like this is kind of early in that kind of black magic kind of stuff like that with the spells and whatnot. I mean, like, spells in Asian horror films are everywhere, right? The spells and the black magic and the curses and the possessions. But when I'm looking back on here, especially in the early 80s, almost all the horror movies from Shaw Brothers and these kind of movies have that kind of element of possession and whatnot. From Devil Fetus to Hell Has No Boundary to Bewitched. It all has that element, unless it's Corpse Mania, and then we kind of got a jolly kind of style thing. But so black magic. Here we go. Here we open up with a woman who wants to kind of curse her husband, and he's an adulterer, and kill him and his wife, the woman he's cheating on. We kind of get the powers here, and we have the uncle from Oily Maniac popping up here as the kind of evil magic practitioner, and he ends up killing these couple people, but he's run out of town by another good magic practitioner, and we kind of move forward in time, and we're cutting to this T. Lung, which is wild that he's in this movie. I know him more from the couple of the John Woo stuff he was in the latter day career, and then some of his more like heroic kind of films where he's a stoic kind of heroic guy. Always great to see T. Lung in these films. But in this one, he's kind of a himbo. He runs this kind of construction company, or he's a foreman of the construction company. And this rich boss, the boss died, and his wife's there, and she's in love with T. Lung. T. Lung's to be married. So he's not interested in her. But Lole, who's this like low-level kind of like creepy, kind of sleazy guy who's around the area here. Lole's great from Human Lanterns and a million other movies. But so he is interested in this woman, of course, because she's rich. And he's like, I'm going to go to this shaman, or I keep calling him shaman all the time, this black magic guy, and get him to make me a love potion so she'll fall in love with me and I get all her money. So that doesn't really go necessarily what he thinks it is. He goes into the jungle and he ends up kind of being cursed himself. And he's just kind of I guess you'd say like a catalyst, so our rich woman can actually get to the our kind of magic practitioner here. And this is where basically the kind of plot moves on forward. Of course, this evil rich woman is going to get T. Lung to fall madly in love with her, and this causes a crazy wild love triangle thing. There's lots of worms under skin and things of that nature, and there's a nice little battle, showdown battle on some scaffolding and kind of construction site, which I think is definitely worthwhile. Emblems and symbols being burned into people's faces. But this one is pretty early, I think. Like when I compare it, this one I hadn't seen before, and I had seen a lot of the other stuff like Bewitched and stuff in the early 80s and whatnot, and Hex, and I'm like, oh boy, this one is definitely predates these, and I can see exactly where that stuff was coming from. And there's a bunch more of these. I can't wait to dive in to watch a lot of the ones from the 70s before the Shaw Brothers horror films, more Lime ghost stories early on, but then we get to this crazy black magic stuff here, and I'm really digging it. I thought this one was pretty solid, pretty good stuff, and I actually prefer the sequel. There's a commentary on here that I remember being very informative. I don't remember who does it. I listened to them both yesterday, the black magic one, so they bleed together on the information, but good information on it. And I'm not necessarily sure how much this one stands out in my memory in comparison to the sequel, but good stuff. I enjoyed it for sure. Now we're going to dive into the Black Magic Part 2. Black Magic Part 2. Some places actually, Queen of Black Magic, the Indonesian horror flick, is known as Black Magic 3. That's not, a real sequel or anything like that, but great movie nonetheless. But Black Magic 2, made a year later, and this one has a commentary by Sam Deegan. Love Sam Deegan. She does a really good job. She does like kind of something that I always enjoy, is hearing that this movie is similar to this movie is similar to this movie, and breaking it down and stuff like in that vein. And that's just kind of how my mind works in a lot of ways, so I enjoy that commentary, and she also full of information. But Black Magic 2, this is kind of oddball one, like same director, same year later, and predominantly 5 of the same 6 cast members from the first film, ensemble cast here. T. Lung comes back, both of the female characters, I don't want to mispronounce their names, but they're in a lot of these. In fact, the one actress is Black Magic 1 and 2 is actually one of the characters in Oily Maniac as well. So and Hacks, they all kind of interrelate in these movies. And even so, like I said, but Lole comes back, and instead of being kind of like a low-level criminal, he's actually the evil black magic practitioner, and this is a great performance. He kind of steals this movie here, as he kind of tends to when he plays a villain character and kind of a lead here. So what we're having is, I think that T. Lung comes from probably Hong Kong, him and his wife, and they're doctors. I think all 4 of the main characters are doctors or medical practitioners of some sort. They come in here, and his friend is baffled by people are getting these strange diseases that are claiming as magic, and there's no real explanation for what is happening here. They're getting the worms under their skin, they're getting poisoned, they're getting sick, all these kind of hexes, crazy things of that nature. And T-Lung obviously doesn't believe any of this, but they start to do some investigation when they really can't figure it out, and it leads them to Lo Lei, who is an 80-year-old man who looks very young because he is in the market of drinking breast milk. Kind of like Dracula. He reminds me of Dracula with breast milk. That's a great thing. It's like Dracula with breast milk. But Lo Lei is kind of, picking these women and getting curses on, not cursing, but kind of controlling them and drinking their breast milk to stay young. But what he also does is he has, I guess you would call it a brothel of dead women. And this is really fucked up because this is like he has zombies, but zombies in a traditional kind of voodoo sense, but they're even more dead. The voodoo zombies are just mind controlled. They're not necessarily dead. But he has true zombies that are dead and the mind control kind of thing here. So he has these magical little anvil-like pins that you'll see him in Bewitched as well, that he has been knocking into these people's heads, and he hexes them, and when he puts it in there, they kind of come back to life, and he can control them. He uses them for prostitution or to carry out his bids, but when he pulls them out, they become a decrepit corpse again. So these four are kind of onto him, and he brings one in originally, and that's where that kind of leads them to it. But the end of this movie is absolutely phenomenal. At first I was like, this isn't as good as the first, but the final act is one of the best Hong Kong horror endings of all time. We have basically like a zombie siege, and it reminded me of Let Sleeping Corpses Lie, and in the hospital. Not quite that good, but damn close. Not close. I don't know. It was really good. But we have this wild, crazy siege with this big fire, and I was absolutely in love by the end of this movie. Fantastic movie. Black Magic 2 is really cool. Both these were on 88 Films releases. They've been remastered since, and now they are widely available in the United States, with a bunch of other great movies that I highly recommend you guys grab. So you have the new... They both have Mandarin and English, which is great because I actually prefer to watch most of my Hong Kong horror movies in their native languages, Cantonese or Mandarin. For some reason, I like the Kung Fu movies a lot of times in English dubbed, but I really prefer my Hong Kong horror movies in their native language, because in the Italian movies, everything's dubbed, and half the actors that I know who they are speaking English anyways. But really recommend this Shaw Brothers set so far. The first 5 movies are absolutely wonderful. We're moving on to Hex next. Hex isn't here. Bewitched is in here. The sequels to Hex, Hex vs. Witchcraft, and Hex After Hex. And then we have Bat Without Wings and Bloody Parrot. I've seen all 4 of those. And then Fake Ghost Catchers, seen that. Great fun movie as well. Demon of Loot is one that I have not seen. Seeding of a Ghost, excellent film, 83. Portrait of Crystal, another 83 one. And Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. So looking like we're going to have a great remainder of this box set. But that's Shaw Brothers Volume 4. Shawscope Volume 4. Sorry about that. Don't want to fuck that up. But yeah, really recommend this set here. Very cool stuff. And we got the little pages here I'll show you in the video. Okay, I'll be relatively quick with this 2025 movie here, and this is Good Boy. And I don't have all that much to say about this movie. It had, some hype because it's such a kind of innovative kind of way to make a movie. I guess you would compare it to what was the Violent Nature movie, where it's like, it's all the point of view of a killer, and this one we have all the point of view of a dog. I remember the, what was that movie, Bad Moon. It was based off a book called Thor, and it was all the dog's perspective, which is kind of a cool idea for a book, but they couldn't do it in the movie. This time, Good Boy actually does it here. So I'm not going to spoil that much. I'm not really going to talk very much about it because it's a relatively short movie, and I don't want to say it's straightforward, but you kind of get this idea where we have this guy who's sick and his dog is taking care of him, and its opening is kind of a tearjerker. I thought it was going to be a very emotional, kind of involving movie at that point, but it kind of switches gear, and we have this kind of guy who's not healthy, kind of going to isolation and visit his old family cabin where it seems that tragedy after tragedy has happened, and he's watching old tapes with Larry Fessenden, who's his grandfather, and that's basically it. And weird kind of things start to happen, and there's like a kind of a mystery peeled back a bit by bit. You don't necessarily see all of it, but you get an idea of what is possibly happening. You can kind of piece it together and everything like that. Well, the one thing that's really cool about it is, but the dog's cute, he's adorable, he's an excellent actor, and he's just a really good actor, to be honest, is how they use characters. They're never really in the full frame. They're kind of in the background. They're not really characters, if that makes any sense to anybody. They're more so like Charlie Brown style things, right? You got the talking heads or somebody on a TV screen. Nobody's really living in the real life. They're not focused on them. The dog is definitely the focus, which makes a nice little element. There's a couple like creepy moments. I think if you let yourself just be completely invested in this movie, I think you will be genuinely kind of creeped out and scared by it. Overall, I think Good Boy is a good film. I think it's worth watching. I do think the runtime is justified being only 73 minutes, because by the end of it, I still was a little bit like, I think I've had enough of this kind of this structure and everything of that nature. And although I do like a violent nature, I think that movie suffers from kind of the same fate. But, I'd rather have somebody try something a little bit different than keep doing the same thing over and over. Maybe if they don't hit a home run, they'll get a base hit or something along the lines, if you guys want a baseball analogy or something along those. But you guys get what I'm saying. Good boy. We're checking out. Let's get into those 1983 movies.
I have returned.
Okay. Show me.
Where is the music now? The sound of laughter. There was never laughter.
Like?
What's what like?
Screwing a psycho.
What the fuck was that?
It's gone.
God blows dead dogs. Just lay it in there.
Eat shit and die, Ricky!
Eat shit and live, Bill.
Yeah, Bill, he's a little wet.
31. 32. 32. Year of a man's prime. Loved by many women. You might still learn to swim. 32. Going. Gone.
The kid was cut in half, Arnie. They had to scrape his legs up with a shovel. Well, isn't that what you're supposed to do with shit? Scrape it up with a little shovel?
One final moment of revenge.
Wondering what's real. All of it is real.
You want to see something really scary?
You bet.
Really?
Yeah.
Get the video, Joe! Long live the new flesh!
No choice but to kill the son of a bitch.
Living one's entire life in a state of fear. It is all I have ever known. Fear.
Are you ready?
Okay, go ahead. What are you doing?
I think I'll be relatively quick with my 1983 movies here. This is a bizarre one from Hong Kong, not a Shaw Brothers, but it's called Red Panther. And Internet Movie Database completely fucked up their genre thing now. It's like a lot of movies aren't listed as horror. They'd be like, this one's listed as crime and Cantonese or something along those lines. It used to be listed as horror. Maybe I'm not looking the right way. But I don't know what's going on. So basically, this is a comedy, crime, horror, thriller. I basically put it thriller, comedy, crime, horror in that aspect. It does have a lot of horror elements, if you guys will, and a lot of these kind of Hong Kong serial killer films do. This is what this is here. We have I can't think of the lead actor's name, but he is a detective. He's also suffering from ass ulcers. I thought it was maybe hemorrhoids at first, but I think it's some sort of cancerous tumors or something along those lines, which is puts his life at jeopardy, of course. And he's trying to figure out who this killer is, and it appears the killer is attacking sick people, cutting out parts of them, their throats if it's bad, their guts if it's bad, their brains if they're bad. And in the beginning, I thought this movie was going to be fairly nasty, and it does have its nasty moments here. When we're looking at the table and you have all these victims and bodies and everything along that lines. But we have a lot of silly hijinks with the detective having sex with his girlfriend and his mom running in and yelling at them. Him worried that, his mom's going to be a victim, and whatnot. It's got the great kind of, Hong Kong like look to it, the like apartment buildings and the structures and whatnot. And there's a couple really good set pieces characters, one of which takes place in a washer, one that takes place at a birthday party, which I think works really effectively. I think the lead guy is decent. I think there's some couple good laughs in here. It's a bizarre, weird film, and tonally it's kind of a mess, but that's a lot of the Hong Kong movies do that. They'll have these kind of weird comedic beats and something dreadfully serious and gross, especially ones that are Category 3 or retroactively rated Category 3. But if you're looking at this one, I think that it's kind of standard in that, I don't mind the comedy elements. It's something that you grow accustomed to, or something that you never fully embrace. I don't know how to say that, but this one's decent. I think that it would look a lot better if it was remastered and whatnot. For fans of something like, what was the one that came out? He Lives by Night from 82 with Kent Chang. It's kind of in line with that. I think that one's a little bit better than this one, but I was interested in this one. It has some nasty little set pieces and some comedic gags and some interesting characters, although I think the killer reveal is a little bit lackluster, at least for me. That's what I would say. Okay, the next one is also a Hong Kong flick from 1983, and this is Rape and Die. Now, a title like that, and oftentimes you'll see titles that are really, lurid or exploitative, like Raped by an Angel, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever, and you're like, oh, these are going to be really messed up movies. And I've heard of it before, and it's happened to me a couple times, but never has it been so deceitful as Rape and Die. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to watch this really nasty exploitation, rape, revenge kind of style film. Like Run and Kill, you know what I mean? Or Run to Kill, Red to Kill, Run and Kill, Love to Kill. All those movies like that. You're like, it'll be something pretty crazy. But this one, it's a little bit more tame. The subject matter is brutal. It's everything on paper. You're like prostitution, rape, abandoned babies, all sorts of really dark, depressing things. You feel like this is more in line with the movie like Hong Kong 1941 or something than by the subject matter and whatnot. But it's actually kind of tame in the way it's done. Although the drama is high and the disturbing factor is still there, the actual stuff they show is not super exploitative. So we have this young girl who's in high school, and her father is, not in the picture anymore, and her mother is a prostitute who has a live-in pimp boyfriend who's an absolute piece of shit, threatens her with, sexual molestation and things of that nature. The father also frequents prostitutes, which creates some really disturbing scenes and whatnot. She's kind of belittled at school here and there. In the very beginning, she kind of witnesses like a crime happening and kind of becomes involved with one of the criminals and becomes the only kind of decent human being within her life. Really, is the male, at least the only decent male within her life is this somewhat small-time criminal and whatnot, and it's all going to end in a horrific tragedy. It has a nice little circular kind of thing here with the alleyway. I won't spoil absolutely everything, but we basically watch almost every female character driven completely mad by the world that they're in, and every male character either be a complete kind of fuck up or a complete sleazeball piece of dog shit. That's kind of here, and the just desserts on a lot of the characters are not necessarily as extreme as you would like, but overall I thought Rape and Die was a pretty solid drama with a good lead performance. I think she does a very good job. It has a lot to deal with and has to do a lot of crazy stuff. It looks good. I mean, as good as it can look. I mean, the quality that I'm watching is not great, but you can tell that it's a well shot, or the locations are great because it's Hong Kong in that certain time frame that I enjoy. But I think that if this was cleaned up and looked a lot better, I think that I would have a little bit more appreciation for it. I don't think it's horrible. It's interesting, but definitely not a horror film. Definitely more in the vein of a drama kind of crime film. I would put it in that aspect. And I don't even know if I'd throw it in the kind of like, youth gone wild Hong Kong movies. But I definitely kind of would put it in there. Yeah, it's not like, hey, we're going to rob a bunch of places, but that kind of element does happen in here. We have all these characters in the prostitution and whatnot. But Rape and Die, interesting stuff. Check it out if it sounds like it's up your alley. Okay, next up is another one from 1983. Surprise, surprise. And this is a Canadian movie called American Nightmare. I mean, it's an American Nightmare in Canada? I guess it still takes place in America. This is an old Scorpion DVD, the Katrina's Nightmare Theater. These were always really cool. I had a bunch of these. I did get rid of some of them when I upgraded them. Maybe I should have kept them. Who knows? But this was actually directed by a guy who did tons of TV stuff, Hallmark kind of movies. But it's produced by Ray Sager, which is nuts to me. Ray Sager was famous for being in Wizard Wizard of Gore and some other Herschel Gordon Lewis movies. And it's also produced by Paul Lynch. He's directed numerous amounts of Canadian horror films, including Prom Night, Cross Country from this year, Humongous. Humongous is a cool film. Prom Night's a pretty solid one as well. I'm looking forward to watching Cross Country. Paul Lynch has a nice little horror movie resume under his belt here, and this film is pretty well directed, actually, in kind of a like really sleazy way here. So like I was just talking about Rape and Die, which I was like was a lot more tame than you'd expect for a title like that. American Nightmare is pretty sleazy. It is exactly what you think of 1983 kind of horror slasher crime film would be. Biggest actor in here is Michael Ironside in a subdued police kind of detective role. Good performance always from Ironside. Second Ironside movie this year. He also did Sins of Dorian Gray, which is a really cool 1983 movie, and a good performance in that one as well. But this one I enjoyed. I enjoyed it the best out of the three 1983 movies I watched this week. So what we have here is we have this kind of rich guy who comes looking for his sister, and I think he's a musician or whatnot, but he has even a richer father who's estranged as well. His whole family's estranged. None of them really get along. They're not kind of talking, but he ends up coming to the seedy side of the city to look for his missing sister. There is a prostitute killer, sex worker killer, kind of going around killing people in fairly graphic detail, and he ends up kind of getting involved doing these mystery things, and you really don't know who the killer is, but he is going to try to figure it out. He ends up getting involved with one of her roommates, who is a stripper, who, the whole point of this movie, it feels like they're just kind of saying, like, yeah, you look at these people like they're these underground seedy people, and they're not human, or they're subhuman and whatnot, but a lot of them are just trying to make a living, and not as, seedy or doing these exploitative things as people think they are, or just down on their luck people, and there's definitely some sympathy in there for them, but they're also going to show them nude the entire movie. So it's your classic cinema of the time, right, where they're going to say, isn't it sad that these people have to exploit themselves to make a living? Let's watch. But it's a movie anyway, so you guys get what I mean. But the lead actress, I really enjoyed seeing. She was good in this. I liked her a lot, and it's rare that you see a lead character in a movie, unless it's about strictly striptease or something, giving a striptease in the movie. And I was like, oh, that is very strange. And there's a sensual sex scene between the two main characters that I thought was good. There is a kind of sleazy, corrupt, political kind of style figure kind of revealed to be a pedophile in here that I thought was interesting kind of aspect on there. I thought the killer motivations were, your classic kind of typical stuff at the time, but effective. Always liked that kind of a reveal in that way. Overall, I think that it's well shot. I think that there's a decent amount of kills. There's decent side characters, including kind of like a trans character who makes a couple jokes and whatnot, and I felt bad for all the people killed within the movie, which is always a positive when you're talking about, like people that are marginalized often in society being killed. The last thing you want to be is like out there cheering for a bunch of people like that to be killed in a movie. You kind of want to cheer for the upper crust that are bad to be killed in the movies. It's much more fun that way. Or if you're watching a slasher, just like some asshole kids or something in those movies and whatnot. But cheering on or celebrating the death of down on their luck people. I remember that movie. It's a weird one that I'm bringing up. In Fabric. I remember watching that movie, and the people in the movie, the people that they show, it's kind of an anthology type deal about this evil dress, and the people in that movie they show die. I'm just like, I just kind of felt really bad for all these people in this movie, and that's the point, is to make you feel bad, and they're very effective at that, but I was just like, I don't know if I want to see this. It's just weird, somehow they got really nuanced performances by these characters and just made them really down on their luck, and I felt bad for them, which is probably a compliment in Fabric, but I did take it when I first watched it that way. But American Nightmare, pretty fun movie, good commentary and special features. We have this Katrina Nightmare Theater, of course, with the host, Katrina, and we have audio commentary with producer Paul Lynch, moderated by Katrina Lee Waters, which I think also Walt, does Bill Olsen pop up on there? One of them does, I think. Audio commentary, audio interview with John Shepard, who's the writer, talks about the career, and Cat's Eyes on camera interview with producer Paul Lynch, which he repeats a lot of the stuff he does in the commentary. Overall, fun, sleazy, crime slasher movie that I'd recommend checking out. American Nightmare. Nice, pleasant surprise, good, solid horror movie that keeps, kind of always fills your back catalog in your mind. I would recommend it. Good stuff. Okay, the Patreon movie this week is called Sweet Hostage from 1975. It is a TV film starring Linda Blair and Martin Sheen. And Martin Sheen is definitely channeling his kind of Badlands energy here, right? The classic Terrence Malick movie he did with Sissy Spacek about kind of the Charles, what is his name? Charles Starkweather kind of character where they drive cross country and do a crime spree and whatnot. So this time around, Martin Sheen is a strange guy from a mental institution that escapes, and he's obsessed with acting, and he seems Shakespeare, and he lives in this weird kind of fantasy world, but he's driving cross country. I think he escapes from the East Coast, and he's driving kind of into the West or, down south or whatnot, and he runs into kind of Linda Blair, who is stuck on her farm with her parents. Her dad, played by Burt Remsen, classic actor in like Terror Vision and Sundown, Vampire and Retreat, and a bunch of probably westerns that I don't know him from. But Burt Remsen, good actor. He's just a piece of shit father in this one, and her parents seem a little bit older than they should be, and she's just unhappy living on this farm, and she's highly intelligent and into kind of more intelligent than what she should be compared to like her surroundings and everything like that. I don't mean to say it like that, but you guys get what I mean. She's smarter than her parents, and she doesn't belong there. She's a unique kind of person, and she feels very stuck. She's kind of just constantly doing the farm work, and the small town, everyone else around seems halfway decent. The sheriff is actually Sal from RoboCop, and he's Redbeard in Hunter's Blood, so he's a good character in this one. But Martin Sheen ends up picking her up and kidnapping her, and they drive to this kind of cabin, and you're thinking, is this going to be kind of like, sexually exploitation thing? But no, they start to have these conversations, and they start to learn to kind of trust each other and almost become friends in a kind of weird, shaky way, and he kind of opens her eyes in a bit, and kind of that weird way, and some people would call that, not Stenhell syndrome, damn you, Dario Argento, what is that, Stockholm syndrome, right, where you become kind of friends with the person who kidnaps you. But this one's overall decent talky, but I think talky and whatnot, but a good performance by Martin Sheen, and Linda Blair is really good in this. When she's young, she's really spectacular. Of course, The Exorcist was, in 1973, so it's not too far off from that. And I imagine it's like her other movies, right? The kind of the teen alcoholic film, which I've heard about, where she's kind of a troubled teenager. I'd like to see those. I need to kind of dive into those. I mostly know Linda Blair from The Exorcist, but I know her from stuff like Savage Streets, where, I wouldn't say that later in her career, her acting was always the most top-notch, right? I feel like when she was younger, she was just a little bit more, into it. She had the more passion in her eyes, if you will. But she's really good in this. Martin Sheen is always a solid performance, and this one he's good. I would recommend checking this one out and whatnot. Burt Remsen, asshole, good in it. The sheriff, good as well, and all the other side characters, I think, do a solid job. But overall, Sweet Hostage, not a bad, TV movie, not an amazing one either, but a good time waster, good Sunday time waster on that one. But I would slight recommend. But yeah. All right, let's get into these questions, comments, and concerns. Chris Rivers. Also a question. If someone were to remake the Corman Price post-cycle of films, who would you choose to direct and star? Should Mike Flanagan be given the reins to follow up miniseries treatment of Fall of the House of Usher? I'd be curious to see what Robert Eggers could do with the run of films. As for actors, it'd be hard not to at least consider Johnny Depp because of all the offbeat characters he played over the years, but I think Benedict Cumberbatch or Tom Hiddleston. If we're skewing older, Doug Jones, Eric Roberts, or Robert Englund. See, this is really hard to do because you're pulling like the big A-lister, directors here, like at them. But I truly think that the people who would be directing this movie would be guys, bigger directors, that are journeyman directors or guys that are down on their luck. And I don't really know if we have that kind of stable of directors like who was directing the poor like Poe Corman movies. Like I guess Corman was an up and comer like low budget director, but I don't think Mike Flanagan, he started that way, but Mike Flanagan's kind of built his budgets up and everything. Mike Flanagan might be too big of a director to touch, the Poe movies to give them that cheap look. But if you want them to be like really stylized and awesome and big budgeted, I think Flanagan and Eggers would be cool choices. But I don't know where you'd go with a low budget. I kind of see these movies as kind of have to be low budget with kind of a washed up actor who needs to reinvent himself and have a second life. You know what I mean? Like Robert Englund's already done that though. Robert Englund's so old. Vincent Price had his first career, like being like a leading man in her 30s and 40s and stuff. And then he came back into these movies. So it's really hard to kind of, the film world's so different. I don't know who you would cast in this. And to be honest, I think somebody like John Malkovich could play a Vincent Price character, but he's probably too old at this point too. So I really don't know where you start here. Nicolas Cage is probably the choice that a lot of people would pick, but he's already had his like second life and everything like that, second, third lives. I don't know. That's such a hard question to do that idea as. I just don't think they can make movies like that. I guess if you wanted to do like a bigger budgeted, crispy, clean, nice looking version, I think that doing something like that would be fun. I think Del Toro would have a hell of a time making one of those movies, you know. But the thing is, his budgets are so big, and we know what we're getting with Del Toro. I'll go with Guillermo del Toro if we're going big budgeted. Johnny Depp could play one of those characters, I think. You know, I'm not the biggest Johnny Depp fan, but sometimes he hits really well, and I think he could do it. Tom Hiddleston's made to be in a Guillermo del Toro movie, but if we're doing low budget, I can't see Hiddleston in that. If we're doing unlimited budget, throw Tilda Swinton in one of those movies. I think she would do well. Then Brendan Timmons. Still can't believe we went from begging for any Sato stateside release to having multiple deluxe sets of his stuff coming out. I know that was covered 2 episodes ago, but now I had to relay that I heard in the VHS podcast Punk Vacation during an interview with Joe Rubin that he said there's a lot more Sato to come on the line as well as a lot more Shaw. And in my opinion, that's good fucking news. Agreed. It's very exciting. Very exciting. Real Moody. Every time you end your videos, you lift one of your elbows and make a yee sound. Can you explain what that comes from? So the elbow, me and my friends years ago, hell, whenever this movie came out, Poltergeist, you know, there's a scene in it when they're at the counter and all of a sudden they turn around and Joe Flyshaker's there and he's playing Jared from the Subway things and he's sitting there like this with his hand on his counter. So this whole that came from that, right? The shoulder comes from Poltergeist. So me and my friends would always do that to each other. They turn, like they'd be sitting here like this and they turn around and I'd just be like this, or one of us would just be like this, like looking at him like that, like, and don't you even think about skipping on that soy gravy. We'd just say something stupid like that, and that was just an inside joke that was all fucking funny. And I used to tend to always make like dumb little creature sounds, ghouly sounds. It used to be so now I just do instead. But yeah, like, you know, just basically making a weird little creature sound at the same time as doing a freaking you know, Joe Flyshaker thing. And now it comes to second nature. I don't even probably remember if I'm doing it. Like, it just automatically comes. So there we go. Here we go. Here, Guided by Violence. Hope Frankenstein gets... I love that name. Guided by Violence. Hope Frankenstein gets a good 4K release. Is always a great show. Thank you. Jason Bovey. Frankenstein was fantastic. Guillermo del Toro always delivers memorable films, and the production quality of the flick was extremely high. The atmosphere, effects, and performances were top-notch, with an unexpectedly strong emotional resonance. I agree. I actually really did enjoy it as well. Way Up Dude gives me a thumbs up. Thank you. Nick from Flanders, 59. Senor del Toro's Frankenstein. As per usual, critics are very divided, with some calling it director's magnum opus, and others saying it doesn't get to Mary Shelley's novel at all, with the making the girl fall for the monster as she did in The Shape of Water. I'll have to find out myself, I guess. Again, a million different Frankenstein renditions. Do any of them get it right? Even your favorites don't get it right, so we're doing that. Why so much anger directed towards poor Airbud? Don't you want him to lick your face and smell your butt? Airbud's dead, man. That dog died. In all seriousness, one of these animals are cute movies are okay, even endearing, but when they keep churning them out, it becomes saccharine and lame. Did we really need all those Lassie and Free Willy movies, I ask you? Also, I mean, do we really need any movie? To be honest, but I get what your point is, your sentiment. Also, when you consider that some of these poor animals were worked to the bone or even died during or immediately after production had wrapped. Yikes. R.I.P. Willie. Maybe now you're actually free. Okay, yeah, it's like working an animal to death for a crappy-ass movie like Air Bud's fucked. But which was your favorite cutesy animal movie growing up? Milo Notice. It's the only one I remember, and Homeward Bound probably, I remember only really liking was Milo Notice. And then after I grew up, everyone's like, yeah, they killed a bunch of cats on that movie. I'm like, what? What? What's the best when animals want to kill us? Movie, there's according to you, sir. I mean, it's Jaws. Even if I don't put Jaws as the best, Jaws is the best. Personal favorite's Alligator, probably. But Jaws. I like Alligator better. It's not better. I know it's not better. If you had created your own Frankenstein creature, how would you go about raising it? Till next time, God willing, give Airbud a big sloppy kiss for me. I'm not digging up a dead dog. But, how would I bring Frankenstein to life? I mean, even in the novel, they're vague. They're like, well, it's electricity and, you know, alchemy. What? I mean, of course they're vague, but you can't do it. If I knew how to bring people back to life, you think I'd be doing this? I'd be making millions of dollars. I'd be selling it to some shitty insurance company, so everybody have to pay out their ass to get it. No, but seriously, you get the point. I don't know. I bring them back through movies. Beyond Solid Ground. Thanks for your recommendations. I'll pick up Zero Woman in Red Handcuffs next time I grab new Cauldron stuff. Entrails of a Virgin and Beautiful Woman also works well, as Cineps had these two titles available for years. But if you want to get them from 88 Films, you can as well. I think 88 Films is the one that has the company. They released all three. So there's a third one, Entrails or Rusted Guts, and they have them on Blu-ray. So if you have extra money and you have a region free, you can import them, or you can buy the old DVDs from Synapse for those two. They do have an interview with the director, I think, but that Blu-ray set, I think it's from 88 Films. You could import that as well. And he goes on, I was like you with VHS. I let go of pretty much anything in my collection that I had on DVD or Blu-ray at the time, and I wish I kept it all. I really haven't considered parting with any of the tapes I still have, even if they're readily available now on Blu-ray. Do you have any big box VHS tapes? Just curious, as I've never noticed any on your shelves in the background. Okay, I'll talk about that in a bit. Actually, there's some big boxes up there. There's what is up there? Some reprints, but there's Body Shop, Scream, Baby Scream, Terror in Toyland, which is Christmas Evil, The Executioner, Death, Curse of Tartu, Invasion from Inner Earth, The Cyclone, all that kind of shit like that. There's some up there. They're too big to sit on that shelf, so the big boxes are up here, the weird clammies and stuff like that. So maybe I'll show you a couple of them. Shoot a little second. Do you ever sell off any of your older DVD or Blu-ray releases with new editions or 4K UHDs coming out, or do you keep everything once you acquire it? And if so, do you like owning or watching the same movie across multiple formats, or is it more so for collecting purposes? If none of the features, if all the features are reported over or I don't care about them, I have gotten rid of a lot of them. I kept my Anchor Bay old DVDs, but I have gotten rid of tons and tons of stuff in the past couple years because it's been boxed up and put in the closet, and it's not doing me any help there. And eventually, it's just gonna probably rot away, and I just want to get rid of it, clear up some space and whatnot. But I don't. Some of the stuff I do keep for sentimental reasons, but I would only keep it for special features or something really cool about the release. I wouldn't keep it just because it's an aspect of collecting. The VHSs are even more nostalgic, so they're simply there and whatnot. But that's kind of where I'm at now. Ken Coakley, I love the Forgotten Pistolero. I first saw it about 10 or so years ago as part of a DVD double feature with the Unholy Four. Unholy Four is a fun movie. Both films starred Leonard Mann and Peter Martell. The Unholy Four also starred Woody Strode and Mrparka lookalike George Eastman. I remember that movie. Sometimes a double feature disc will have a throwaway film as a second feature, or to cut costs, not remaster the second one and release a pixelated version. I first saw the trailer for Forgotten Pistolero on YouTube. The trailer had the music from the movie and I was sold, so I got the DVD from Amazon. Soundtrack would sound cookie cutter if you don't hear the actual music. It had typical instruments that were usually used in spaghetti westerns. Whistling, electric guitar, tuned in certain ways. I had to give away a small spoiler. The scene where Martell tells a man who he really is, and they show a flashback of Sebastian and his sister, Gabriella, as children waiting for their father to return home after a vicious battle against France. After children welcome him, their nanny greets him as well. When he walks off, the nanny turns and you see the shawl with the rose pattern on the back, which was shown earlier hanging in Sebastian's cabin. Music they used when they revealed the shawl in the flashback was haunting. Another thing I noticed was the relationship between two characters. Martell was getting upset and drinking heavily as they were nearing the home city where they were going to rescue his sister. The cast was amazing. Leonard Mann from Night School. You were right last week. Yeah, I felt like I was like, he is at Night School. Spaghetti Western Luminary, Peter Martell, Arizona Colt, Luciana Pazzoli, Thunderball, Piero Lulli, Kill Baby Kill, and Jose Suarez, Texas Adios. The music was composed by Roberto Pragadio, SS Love Camp. Everybody loves SS Love Camp. Just kidding. But I also watched Curel on the Criterion Channel. One of my favorite video stores carried it, but it was always out. Through the years, it was popular in the LGBTQ community, along with Pink Flamingos, Rocky Horror, and others. My main reason for wanting to watch the movie was the fact that Brad Davis was in it as well as Franco Nero. This movie challenged cruising as a sexually explicit film. They showed Brad Davis being sodomized and having his feces wiped on a towel. Fun fact, Brad Davis has a brother, Gene Davis. Gene Davis was in Cruising as well, as played the naked killer in Charles Bronson film 10 to Midnight. I did know that Gene Davis had a Brad Davis were brothers. Brad Davis also in Midnight Express. Interesting pair of brothers. Brad Davis had a tragic end, of course, but Gene Davis, great in Cruising and 10 to Midnight. Good actor. Underrated actor, I would say. Just he's only in a handful of movies. I think he's in a martial arts, so he played like a Kung Fu movie too, or martial arts movie I saw years ago. That's Gene Davis. But yeah, let's get into the Patreon pick here. Let's draw a few names out. We got 5 names. See what we're going to watch. Again, if you've been put in here and you're a patron and you haven't been drawn out in a few draws, let me know and you'll get bumped to the top. Rob, Maxim Overdrive. Who made who? Who made you? Who made... sorry, guys. It's like my favorite one. Oh, Once Upon a Time in the West. Rob. Yeah, it's two from Rob. Rob killing it. the two best movies ever made back to back. Once Upon a Time in the West and Maximum Overdrive, everybody's favorite. What else we got here? Jim Simon the Jerk, 1979, another great movie. Steve Martin. It's been years since I watched The Jerk. What else we got here? Jim Simon, Born to Win, 1971. That's weird. It's two Robs, two Jim Simons. They're probably all bunched up. I don't know how, but. And Tyler Tadeo, Mysterious Skin, another great movie. I don't think I have a Blu-ray of that. Has ever got a Blu-ray or 4K? I know I got a Blu-ray from Strand, but I didn't because it was just kind of a standard release. Excellent movie by Greg Araki. I think actually I'm friends with the writer of the novel on Facebook. Scott Helm, but I love the movie. It's been years since I watched it, but excellent film. I remember it was one that I saw years and years ago, and I think Greg Araki's movies. I pretty much like all his movies. I don't think I disliked any of them. Kaboom! When I first saw it when it came out, wasn't a favorite, but I definitely rewatch it, and I bet I like it. But let's get the hell out of here, guys. All right, guys, thank you very much for watching, and as always, have a good one. Hey.